Next is the panel discussion. As I mentioned at the outset, RE users' activities include identifying the challenges when people want to use renewables, and we have compiled the recommendation. Based on this recommendation, the representatives of the government and the businesses will join the panel. So first of all, Mr. Tetsu Inoue of Sony, Mr. Hideki Okauchi of Kao, Mr. Katsuhiro Koyama of Daiwa House Industry, plus just the latest speaker from METI, Mr. Hikino, will join us in the panel. The moderator is the leader of the recommendation from CDP Japan, Kae Takase. Ms. Takase, I hand over the microphone to you.
皆さんこんにちは。
Good afternoon. I am Takase of CDP. Please take your seats. Yes. Let's go speedy. We have a limited time, so at REI and with CDP together with WWF Japan, we have worked together with the businesses, the consumers, companies who want renewables, want so much renewable but do not have enough to purchase. And we have made a recommendation. They want to purchase so much and don't have enough. Mr. Hikino, thank you for staying after your presentation. There are some more than 20 users, including major businesses. Large businesses have got together. We struggled, went back and forth in a discussion, and this is a live discussion between the policymaker and ourselves. This is indeed a live engagement and a dialogue, and we look forward to that. We want to enjoy this dialogue. As a policy recommendation, first of all, what we have compiled. Mr. Hikino already mentioned that the government understands what we want to tell you. Cheap, renewable, the government wants to produce and use a lot of high quality renewable. We understand, you said. So it should be high quality, clean, natural, renewable energy. The government said that you understand, but we want to emphasize our demand. Of course, there are lots of technical discussions that we did, but by 2030, what do we envision? What kind of an environment do we want to realize by 2030? And this is our vision. More than 44% should be non-fossil, but our goal is RE100. So 44% of the renewable. And if there are nuclear restart, it could be even more. In terms of the cost target, renewables should be cheaper than fossil fuel. That is what we envision. As for the retail tariff, what the users pay, even if the generation cost is cheap, if the tariff is expensive, businesses will be in trouble. Therefore, the retail tariff should be the same, or even, of course, we want it cheaper than other power sources, but these are the three visions or the strategies about the percentage renewable, cost, and retail. But it should not end with the vision. We users, a study group of challenges, it's the frontline people. It is almost maniac or fanatically technical people got together. It was such a fun. So it's a very technical, detailed recommendation because we spoke with developers who were on the site developing renewable technology, but we ended up with 9 recommendations. Mr. Ishida of REI compiled. So look at this beautiful Japanese. But this is my very casual language. Mr. Hikino did mention this, but cannot connect to the grid and cannot generate renewable, cannot produce renewable even if they want to because it's too expensive or too high risk. and frightening. So although if they wish to produce renewable, too risky, too expensive, or cannot connect to the grid, or difficult to purchase, lack of traceability, do not understand the origin of the generation. It is called renewable or non-fossil, but the businesses spoke about criteria of procurement, including Google or Goldman Sachs. They all have their in-house purchase criteria. So whether they are really purchasing the qualified renewable, then such companies cannot purchase without traceability, not knowing the origin. So generate or to purchase or procure, it's just too expensive. Just identifying the challenges, that should not be the end of the discussion. What are the leverage points? What can be done to change this situation? So we are nerds, geeks, fanatically maniacs of technology, so we entered into in-depth discussion. All the people here are fanatic geeks and nerds of this area, so you might be aware, but there are regulatory difficulties, deregulation or zoning will be required. On the right-hand side, it says proposal to change, like deregulate or zoning, or the country developer guideline in order to facilitate negotiation with the local community. And about the expensive cost, Mr. Hikino mentioned that the government is aiming to reduce the cost. But at the same time, there are policies that cause renewable to be expensive. That is the charges per kilowatt on the side of the generators, or about the priority connection to the grid. Some countries do have priorities for renewable, but that is not available in Japan. So for the renewable which the central government wishes to expand, is it really conducive to expanding the selected renewable? To think that you are already grown up and mature enough so that no subsidy is required. I heard an interesting anecdote. It's like asking babies to pay money for their diapers. Interesting analogy. And the connect and manage was discussed. The Japanese government said that they will promote, which is wonderful, but too late, too slow is our feeling. Yes, there is emphasized budgeting to strengthen the grid and the distribution network. Daiwa house industry, and they want to purchase power from the adjacent generators, but they will have to pay the wheeling charges, and reverse power flow will have to be avoided. Lots of difficulties. On the side of consuming cleaner energy, there were lots of presentations about PPA. So between the renewable developer, a direct contract between the final consumer. To increase new renewables, there should be additionality, but to control the risk. This is expanding in Europe and the USA. But in Japan, Japan requires intermediary, which is the retailer, which was mentioned as a challenge in this country. About the non-fossil certificate tracking, we are very grateful. However, as for the non-FIT, I did not hear that you plan to do so. So something must be done about non-FIT. I think that is the key area to expand the renewable, and therefore the tracking system about the renewable attribution is required as the information foundation. And the central government thinks that you don't need to burden the budget, but we can talk about that. And to reduce the minimum price of the FIT non-fossil value certificate, because the FIT non-fossil certificate is expensive. Mr. Ishida's technical language is described in my casual language to make it easy to understand, and these are the 9 recommendations. As I listened to Mr. Hikino's presentation, there were areas that we are happy to hear the advancement, and there are some areas that we think more has to be done by the central government. The red letters means that we think it's a gap, that's homework, and the blue is we have found even more challenges or questions. Therefore, which is the priority challenges that have to be dealt with? I have asked prior questions to the 3 users from the companies, and these were the cited issues. I didn't tell Hikino-san beforehand, sorry, because we just prepared this. So our recommendations, and in the audience, raise your hand if you joined our discussion. You were there? Yes, sir? I'm sure that many of you were here, but Japanese are shy, so they might not declare that they were at the meeting, but this was what we discussed.
ですが、
Since this is our live engagement with policymakers, there are the corporate users, and we have Hikino-san on the side of the policymaker. There will be Q&As. So as the first batter, Daiwa Industry, Daiwa Housing, Mr. Koyama. I keep saying Daiwa Houchu. Koyama of Daiwa House Industry. There were 9 policies mentioned, and I do have a request to the government, which is number 4, connect and manage. As was mentioned, I look forward to the accelerated implementation of what you said you will do. We are the user, but we also engage in power generation as part of our business. And there are some areas suitable for power generation, and there are companies like us who want to do, but we can't do because a connection to the grid is not available. And TEPCO's trial, by changing the operation rules, there were much more availability to connect renewable to the grid. So as soon as possible, we want this to be available across Japan. We joined RE100 and self-consumption type of solar power generation. We have studied the possibility, but again, we do not have the opportunity to be connected to the grid. Weekends, we would be wasting the power generated. Then it would not be compatible with our investment criteria in Daiwa. That is why we cannot do the generation business that we want to do. That is why we want to early connect the measure across Japan. Mr. Hikino, the connect and manage. I know you are working hard. You are. The government, you are doing your utmost.
Yes, we have declared that the connect and manage will be introduced. So establishing a system and introduce a control system will be required. And the development of the system is the issue. So it could be the same companies conducting renewable energies, but it's a matter of providing this system. And regarding the non-fossil fuel, we have a non-fire is what we are working on as well. So,
I will not grill you with when. No, number 1, we have done it already, and number 2, after the system, we will start the operation within 3 years, and we have already started about those actual operations. So, in the northern part of Tohoku, already we have just done the auction, and the second and the third, as was mentioned, with the assumption, already it has been decided who will start the business. So 3.6 million kilowatt already has been auctioned. And the third point, I know you have lots of opinions by different stakeholders, so we shall have to think about that. But within the end of this year, by the end of this year, a certain level of rules will be determined. We have already made that a public announcement. Thank you. CDP, it promotes corporate disclosures. So which grid part is available, that kind of disclosure? What is the disclosure like? Like where there is availability at which grid and which company have won the access to the grid? Is that information disclosed? About the largest 2 grids, the coloring and the mapping, the transmission is made public in our website. The black means available and the red is not available. And the N-1 tripping, I think it was green. I think there were 3 different colorings showing the N1 tripping restriction. And how much power is actually flowing, that must be visible. Otherwise, forecasting of the control level will not be possible. So that disclosure, we are working on that from last year and this year. Non-professionals are asking professionals to confirm the viability of such businesses, and analysis being possible. In terms of information disclosure, on the one hand, from the generator side, they don't want to disclose their confidential information, but the central government try to disclose to the extent possible. So if there are a lack of disclosure, you can all tell us. Lovely, wonderful. According to CDP evaluation, we can give you an A for your disclosure level. Thank you. Next is Mr. Inoue.
はい。自由に。
Okay. Freely. My name is Inoue from Sony. At Sony, of the issues here, what we are taking the initiative to take forward is the connection part. Item number 4 has already been answered. So I'd like to talk about our concrete case at Sony and address the issue number 6. From tomorrow, self-wheeling system would be used so that solar power generation will be used at 2 offices. Whether usage of distribution network, solar panel introduced area is 6 kilovolts. The destination is 60,000. So I don't know whether this will be considered a distribution network, but within half a kilometer, the solar panels installed within that area is to be utilized. Earlier, we heard from the Bloomberg presentation that, as Mr. Koyama said, if there is to be no reverse flow, you need to reduce the capacity. Even if you have a wide rooftop, you want to place many solar panels, you cannot. And I think this situation can be observed at other companies as well. So reverse flow is possible in our case because we were able to make that connection. So reverse flow will be made so that at other offices, this power can be utilized. Of course, it wasn't easy. After getting the connection, there were many problems. One challenge that I would like to raise here is that transmission operators, we needed to have interaction with them, dialogue with them. Of course, there's going to be reverse flow, setting this into general transmission, same amount, same time, synchronous balancing is needed in order to let the power out into the grid. But if it is one flow, you can just let it flow. So if without regard to the destination, fit that is to be installed, without destination, balancing is not required. But when you are responsible for destination, then according to Bloomberg's material, you need to control and manage production. But when it comes to solar, you don't know when power can be generated. So listening to Bloomberg presentation, I thought that our challenges were well summarized. Now, distribution network utilization, one company or one individual to be able to flow electricity in the distribution network more casually to be used by others, I think that will make it very easy for everyone to participate. Mr. Hikino was talking about some of the reform plans in the distribution network. So if those problems are solved, more utilization of the distribution network will be possible, which would expand usage of renewable energy. Thank you.
じゃあちょっとコメント
Your comment? FIT, you can generate when you can generate, that's right, but because of that, in the case of solar, the generation management should be conducted strictly. That is the global trend. About the balancing, how strict to enforce, but in that way, solar sometimes generate or do not generate or deviate from the forecast, and the backup cost, the standby cost, depends on the unit price of assumption. It's like 30 billion yen per annum just for the backup to support the variable solar. Those who are consuming solar as they like, yes, there are benefits, but there are backup generation power which everybody has to pay. So who pays for that backup? After all, everybody shares and everybody is paying by way of electricity tariff. That's how we support the renewable. So the renewable generators should it be supported by all the other consumers, or at the timing of renewable generation by accurate forecast? Do we enforce it onto the generators, which would be better? The global trend is that the renewable generators should make more accurate forecast, which requires innovation for that. So that is the global direction, and therefore self-wheeling, FIT would also go into the same direction. Ms. Takase, so to the divert from an adjacent land, that self-wheeling should be cheaper. That is a trade-off. On the one hand, to transmit to your adjacent neighbor, when you bring from far away, that means it's going to be expensive. Like in Japan, to send a postcard is the same price, but for the parcel delivery, depending on the distance, the price will be different. What happens then for Hokkaido, from Tohoku, to send a large amount of wind energy to Tokyo? The transmission charge is going to be expensive. Then the thermal at the Tokyo Bay, because it's adjacent, meaning close to Tokyo, it's going to be cheap. So making it cheap to send from adjacent means expensive to transmit from distant area. Then the renewable or the offshore wind, and it's going to be difficult to use offshore wind to be developed from areas far away from metropolitan. So the optimum combination of different policies will have to be considered. It's not that, renewable is going to be the core and it's going to increase and expand. So yeah, it's not a baby anymore. You do not need so much support. Renewable 100, I'm from the government, so I cannot say we go for RE 100. But if you go to RE 100, if it is really 100% renewable, those consumers who are far away or who are close, who's going to pay? So the tariff structure has to be decided by the central government, and the generators all will have to keep this in mind. Thank you. About avoiding the reverse power flow. Yeah, that's a frequently asked question, but I do not have a good understanding about those rules. You have to clarify the issue. You have to teach me. Long ago there was NA farm or double generation. Yes, such issues existed, and EVs. I am not sure. I don't think the central government regulation causes such problems. Those of you in the audience, please come to METI. You tell me about the problem. I'm not sure. And the gentleman beside you can tell you about that, about the no-fuel. The self-consumption solar we are using.
So that is how we are introducing the solar energy, but in that case there will be excess of power. So to the power electric companies, we are requesting connectivity, but most of the companies are saying that they cannot accept a reverse power flow. So control will have to be introduced. That is the prevailing response.
About the policy and the operation of the transmission and distribution operator, let me confirm and study and come back again. Thank you very much. So I look forward to improvement by better communication. And once again, Mr. Okawachi, about the non-fossil.
About using the non-fossil certificate, we are introducing renewable energies. Now we are introducing new types, and offsite PPA is also used to expand the usage of renewable energies. But as already explained today, there will be intermittence in terms of renewable energies, and therefore there is a mismatch. Therefore, that means that the power display will be very important in the introduction of renewable energies, and I think the non-fuel certificate is very important in that regard. We have started procurement from 2018 in a full-fledged manner. Now, having procured with the non-fossil fuel, we have some insight gained. There will be auction provided, and it seems that compared to supply, the contract amount is still very limited, and 1.3 yen is the floor that has been set, which is considered to be very high. This cost will be incremental to the electricity charge, and therefore it has to be continuously paid. Therefore, we hope that the minimum price in terms of auction can be reduced. Now, it is essential that the non-fossil certificate is connected to the electricity provided. Therefore, ultimate price is set by the electric power company. In terms of the auction price, the electric power companies cost is also included. In some of the regions when we started the procurement, we have found out that for the electric power companies, the incremental expense is subject to disparity. Now, in terms of the non-fossil certificate, the renewable energy surcharge forfeit is to be reduced. Therefore, that means that it should be returned to the non-fossil certificate operator. We hope that system to avoid such costs can be introduced. In terms of tracking, thank you very much for doing the demonstration test. We have received the support from the power companies. We have been able to participate in the demonstration test. Currently, tracking is not enough. That is the prevailing view. And as the system is improved, the power generation companies must provide tracking information on a voluntary basis. This is also related to the cost that was mentioned. The electric power company, we hope that it will not be too burdensome in terms of collecting such information. And we hope that a common tracking system will be introduced between the power companies as well. We hope that the tracking system can be ensured within the system. I would like to ask for your support in that regard. And for EFIT, I hope that further consideration will be the non-FIT should be considered as well. Non-FIT, the non-fossil fuel certificate should be introduced as well. Now, electricity with the non-fossil will have to be purchased at a very high price, and because there will be point allocated by renewable energies, so there is companies are compelled to purchase at high price, but the surcharges will be reduced by 1.3 yen, but more than double price cost is being incurred. Therefore, do you have any response with respect to this area?
はい、ありがとうございます。まず
Thank you. About the non-fossil and the tracking. In terms of the principle, why it is not tracked at this moment is, first of all, the bilateral power transaction. It is on an income based, and going forward, if the non-fossil certificate and for the bilateral deals, even without the tracking, if the power at least is tracked, I think it will be recognized with RE100. If it is combined, I think it would be okay. So the electricity dealing is tracked, and if the deal is combined, we thought that that would be recognized as part of RE 100, because we thought that if the central government did that tracking, it would be crowding out the private sector. But on the exchange, if it is to be exchanged and if tracking is required, or if the tracking is not sufficient, if it is a whole of market challenge, then why the central government intervenes? That will also have to be considered. It's not that we do not want to do it or we want to avoid it, but we must think about reasonable reasons. Our position is still open about this. Generation and retail, that a direct deal should be made possible. But then there's a problem of consumer protection. The retailers, there's about 600 businesses. I mean, almost to go extreme, it's anybody can do it as long as they can assert that they protect the consumers, like fuel retailers or rice shops in Japan. They can sell energy if they want to. So if the generators also are licensed by the retailers, they can do both the generation and the retailing. But I think it's only the logic. In reality, how much non-fossil generation sources owned by that generator, that would be the real issue. I will not mention a specific name, but when there are multiple factories or if there are retail stores going beyond the different markets, purchasing power from out of region power utility, this already happens. There are local power utilities I can see in the audience, but if it is expensive from the local grid, because of the market liberalization, you have the freedom to purchase from PPS, the non-incumbent. You have the liberty to purchase from where you want to, from and out of the region generator. Let me supplement. On a bilateral deal to be recognized as RE 100, I said so, but I mean, without tracking of the origin, the non-bilateral deal is not possible because of the absence of traceability. So I know it's difficult for the central government to do so by observing the pilot. There must be perfect governance if the central government does it. And in terms of user-friendliness, like it would be determined by the auction and not exactly user-friendly. So what the private sector has done to supervise might be the appropriate position of the central government. I am starting to feel this. I am talking as I feel and think. I am saying what I am thinking at this moment. And providing access to the certificates by the users, I think that might make it easier even for the non-FIT certificates. Thank you for your responses. Do we have 5 or 10 minutes? Do we have 15? Indeed, let me be more incisive. Mr. Koyama. I thought my role was over. I was thinking about my concluding remarks. But it was briefly mentioned earlier. We are engaged in urban planning, town building, city building. So if just beside ourselves, if a neighbor has a surplus power, so locally produced, locally consumed, without purchasing power from distant places, we wish to be RE 100 within the community, which means we don't want to be an excess burden on the grid if it is locally generated and locally generated in Tsukada or Funabashi. Renewable 100% town building is what we are engaged in. But from non-fossil, the power is to be provided. Although there is a solar surplus, the surplus is returned back to the grid, which is extremely complicated. So locally generated, locally consumed renewable, we want to expand in a particular local community. So that's why comments were related to the distribution network. And Mr. Hikino said that the government will look into that about distribution, reform of the distribution network. We are interested in that area. Of course, we will do our demonstration studies as well. That was a comment, right? Any response, Hikino-san? No. Thank you, Mr. Inoue.
はい。
Earlier, something that I didn't know, balancing renewable energy, when you give it under FIT, 30 billion is the amount of money that is being incurred. Now, progress of initiatives, I believe that is now being disclosed, but I do hope that information is made available in an easy to understand fashion. Of course, we need to make the effort of going out to get that information, especially connect and manage. Second round is already has been put together. That's something that I didn't realize. So when number 2 and number 3 are realized, not allowing reverse flows, well, even METI didn't think so. It could be that power companies and transmission operators may have been turning it down. But as somebody who has been turned down in the past ones, I was hoping that would not happen going forward. This is just a comment. But METI officials going to utilities, asking them what is the situation, that may be difficult. But I think this needs to be checked or monitored or checked, rather than saying supervised. If you could check whether things are being done appropriately, that would be appreciated.
でこれも
Thank you very much. I think this panel will also be broadcast, so I'm sure that there will be audiences interested. And personally, if Mr. Hikino, you become a YouTuber, why don't you talk about your policies on the YouTube? I mean, it's up to you to decide, but I encourage you to. And Mr. Okawachi, sorry.
そうですね。
Now, we have been talking about the grid as well as the transmission network. Policies will have to be promoted in order to promote the uptake of renewable energies. I hope progress will be made. And then the renewable market as well as a non-FIT, non-fossil market will be developed. And I hope that there will be a price difference accordingly. Now, if it is unbundled, I think there could be more flexible operation. With the current FIT non-fossil, the time of generation is subject to expiry, and when expense or cost is incurred, it could transcend accounting periods. So I think that there has to be hearing with the users as well. I hope that further improvements will be made. I hope that continuous effort will be made.
じゃあちょっと
Thank you very much. I think this would be the final round, starting from Mr. Inoue.
じゃあ
Last comment. What was not covered? Because this is a good opportunity, I would like to take up the initiatives that was not touched. 44% renewable energy is the proposal, recommendation being made from REI, and we signed up to it. And obviously, the amount of supply must be increased. So the first one, deregulation, geothermal, the environmental agency, the environmental ministry, natural parks law, and solar, obviously, where it can be installed, or offshore wind, there are fishing rights. So METI alone cannot make these decisions, I understand. But at the government level, low carbon, decarbonization is the direction that Japan should be headed. And if we can do that, please negotiate with other governmental bodies so that the supply of renewable energy could be increased. We have signed up to RE100, and this is going to facilitate us getting closer to RE100. Thank you very much. That's just a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Koyama. Thank you for this opportunity. I am not a fanatically nerd, geeky person. I can't go so technical, but about the strategy, Ms. Takase mentioned at the outset, by 2030, renewable 44% was the strategy recommended. As the central government or as a nation, I sincerely want such an ambitious commitment so that all the stakeholders, including ourselves, that we can all work hard. If you can be the engine, to be the leader, the government, if it can be ambitious, I think it's important. Without such a clear vision, whatever has to be done, there is a tendency to search for excuses. If the government comes up with a very clear vision, we can all get together and think about what can be done rather than making excuses. I want you to be the leader of this big movement. I think this was the whole request by ourselves. I ask the government. Thank you for the powerful message. We can do it if we have the will. Can do if we have the will to make an ambitious vision. I mean, there is the Japanese government energy basic plan, not easy to change the plan, but we can do more, and we want to do more. Or even in such a language, we hope to see an even more powerful vision. Maybe if you don't call it a basic plan still, we want to see a clear commitment by the government, then the market will follow. Mr. Okochi.
ですね。いくつか
Now, I have put forth some requests to the utilities for the first time. The non-fossil fuel certificates will be handled, and on the part of METI, tracking will be introduced for the first time. So we are very much appreciative of these efforts made in promoting renewable energies. Related parties are requested to provide guidance and support, and I'd like to ask for your continued support going forward. And Hikino-san, do you also have a final comment? In terms of the basic plan, when the renewable energy is going to increase from 22 to 44, and therefore it is considered to be still small. But going from 22 to 44 is not a cap. It can be 30 or 40. Whatever should be achieved, that is the government policy. But we should, the funding is not infinite. And 3E balance is also very important as well on the part of the government. Therefore, in terms of energy mix, as I have shown you in the graph today, we don't want to go beyond the budget to achieve this objective. Therefore, frankly speaking, I said you said that it is equal, but the price of the fossil fuel and renewable energy, if it's the same, then I think it will drive renewable energies without doing any policy. That is the reason why we want to make it a lower price, because there is a barrier because of high cost should be overcome. So in implementing such policy, we are very grateful that we are trying to increase the objective. At the current pace, some people are saying that we are too rushed. Therefore, the users' point of view should be considered as well. And to increase in a steadfast manner is where consensus must be gained. And low-priced, easy to use is what we should realize. So people will use it even without the guidance from the government. So I hope that this will be forthcoming. And as a government representative, as well as individual, I think it will make everyone very happy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for painting a great vision. 24% is not a cap, you said. So we hope to see further increases. Independent, autonomous, renewable energy is what we would like to aim at. Earlier, North American case was presented. In North America, the government doesn't have to do anything. It's renewable energy expanding on its own. I would like to see Japan get to that phase as quickly as possible. As Mr. Okawachi said, renewable energy. Last year, Japan hosted Rugby World Cup, and one team as a slogan that became very popular. We should have a one team spirit. Crossing over different positions, we want to reduce the threat of climate change so that the economy and people's livelihoods, our visions could be achieved both at the society and individual level. A bilateral consultation that is between users and policymakers, we came together to have this discussion, but utilities, the suppliers, could join us. Maybe three-way talk would be good. Two-way times two may be good. Reusers, issues, studies group. You are members of reusers, but we should form one team to see renewable energy to be available at a cheaper price in abundance so that 100% that encouraging remarks by Mr. Hikino could be achieved by 2030. Thank you very much for staying with us until the very end of the program. Thank you.
パネリストの皆様ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much to the panelists, and also thank you very much to Ms. Takase for moderating the panel discussion. And also thank you very much to the audience for staying with us over the long hours of the summit. Now we will be holding a reception in a different room. It's to the right as you exit this room. There will be some beverages as well as food. I hope you will take this opportunity to continue discussions with the panelists as well as the participants. Please make sure that the translation receivers are left in your seats before you leave. With this, we would like to bring this summit to a close. Thank you.